Journalist Caleb Hannan recently wrote a piece in Grantland about a putter that he came across one late night while he was watching YouTube videos. Now, the title of his piece is Dr. V's Magical Putter, and it was created by a woman who apparently was a scientist. So he's watching this YouTube video. Gary McCord, who's a tournament announcer for CBS, is talking about this particular putter, and he's really vouching for it, how it's really going to help revolutionize golf. And of course, this journalist is really curious about it. So he wants to find the maker, the creator, the inventor of this putter. And it was a woman by the name of Dr. Anne Vanderbilt. So he finally gets into touch with her, and they start interviewing. And he finds out all these really interesting facts about her. She was an aeronautic physicist from MIT, right? So, wow, that's a really great credential. She also went to Penn. Apparently, she worked for the Defense Department. So she had a science background that allowed her to create this putter that would really help golfers. There was even a guy who invested about $60,000 so she can make this dream of creating this putter come true. Now,
so sometimes they say, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out a putter like that. But in this case, it actually took a rocket scientist to figure out a putter like that.
Yes.
And she went to Penn, so she must be really smart.
Anyways.
Can you tell I went to Penn? All right, forward.
So the name of this putter was the Oracle GX1, and the journalist, Hannan, decided to try it out for himself, and he said it was great. It was designed very differently. It actually went against conventional wisdom in golf. So people were surprised that it even worked. But, a lot of times when you hear that something is great and it's being endorsed by other, golfers, you're under the assumption that, hey, you know what, this is going to help me improve, and you'll just play better as a result of that, right? So anyway, he writes the following. I was ready to proclaim her an unknown genius with an idea that could revolutionize golf. All that was left to do was make sure the stories about engineering accolades and top secret defense projects were legit. It was, I thought, just a formality. But as he did more and more research, he found that she was not who she was saying she was. I asked if she could help me confirm a few facts about her past life. When I heard back, the patient woman I had spoken to on the phone had been replaced by an angry, mocking scientist. I contacted the registrar's office at MIT. It had no record of anyone named Anne Vanderbilt attending. The registrar at the University of Pennsylvania confirmed the same thing. So somehow he reaches out to some family members, and he finds out that Dr. V is actually not a doctor at all, and that she was born a man. So he confronts her about it prior to publishing the story. And I should note that the story was recently published. And she denies it. Her significant other also denies it. Okay, so things get really, really sketchy, and it gets really ugly. In October, she commits suicide. She took pills, she overdosed on pills, she put a plastic bag over her head, and she committed suicide, and it was tragic. And now he has published this story, and people are upset because he outed her. So the question is, as a journalist, what do you do ethically? Do you out someone that you were writing about if you find out that they were born a different sex?
My main question is going to be, were her credentials still correct or not?
Her credentials were not correct.
Okay, so now that you know that, it becomes a slightly different story. Because when I first read about this, it was not in the context of the original article. It was people saying that what he had done was really, really wrong, okay, that what the reporter had done. So it's one thing to say, hey, she's a liar, she's actually a dude, ha-ha, right? It's another thing to just not run the story because she says, don't out me, when she's actually lying about her credentials. To me, the gender part is irrelevant,
yes.
Right? And of course, what I wish he had done was outed her fake credentials without getting into the gender issue.
Absolutely. So I agree with you 100%. I think the story about how she convinced the CBS announcer and all of these, very well-known golfers to use her putter, but it turns out that she did not have any type of scientific background at all. I mean, that is a big story, right? So I wouldn't mind if he had written that and it was some sort of expose on her and her company.
So literally, she was not a rocket scientist, and that's part of the story she was selling. So as a journalist, to uncover that, I think that's exactly what you're supposed to do. But when you get into the gender issue, what difference does it make?
Yeah, the gender issue is totally irrelevant. I really wish that he didn't include that. And look, when you have a company and you say, I designed this with my expertise as an aeronautical physicist, well, if a journalist finds out that you lied about that, that's something worth reporting, right? But he needlessly went to the darkest possible thing that he can report on, which has absolutely no impact on investors. It has absolutely no impact on the sports world. It just needlessly harms her because it's something that she doesn't want to share with the rest of the world.
On the other hand, ask him not to report it at all. I just don't agree with it. And, you know, if you're convinced that the gender identity issue is an integral part of the story, which I'm not convinced about, and if you say to me, well, then you shouldn't run the story at all, I disagree. I think you should run the story. Look, he's a rare reporter who's actually bothering to question things that are given to him, right? And to actually do an investigation. He does an investigation and he finds out she's lying. Now, if she's so devastated by that investigation, and we don't know, when she committed suicide, she didn't say it's because of this reporter or it's because of the transgender issue. It could be that she was devastated that she had been found out that she was lying about the whole thing.
Yeah, and let me also jump in about that. She had previously attempted to commit suicide in 2008. So I don't agree with what the journalist did here in outing that she was transgender, but I think it's unfair to blame him for her suicide. And I feel like a lot of people have been doing that online in certain columns. And it's just, I think that that's a very unfair assumption to make.
Yeah. Overall, I'm glad that he did an investigation. Obviously, it had a tragic conclusion. But, you know, if you thought that uncovering things that were going wrong, in whatever context it might be, obviously governmental issues are far more important, but if you're in the sports world, a lot of people just do fluff. I mean, you could be Phil Simms. Everybody in the NFL is always right, the refs are always right, the players are always great, or you could do a real report like this. I'd rather go in that direction, and if you're worried about the consequences of your tough reporting, well, then you're not going to do any tough reporting. On the other hand, you know, we wish she was alive today, and we wish that he had kept the gender identity issue out of the story, but he felt it was an important part of his story. So it's a very, very tough issue where no one really won here. But I'm with Anna. If you say that he shouldn't have run the story at all and he was malicious about it, you know, if some of the I understand some of the critics point out to some of the descriptions that he has in the article about her.
Yeah, I read the entire thing.
Right.
I read the entire thing. I know all the details of the story. He did not have to mention her gender at all. It was totally irrelevant. But I think what he was attempting to do was paint a picture of someone who lies to everyone. You know, she's deceitful. And so in order to make his case, he included that. But it was really unnecessary. If you're trying to make a point about how she is a fraud, how she is convincing people to give her $60,000, but she doesn't have the credentials to invent something for the golf world, then you're making a good case. You don't need to include her gender identity at all.
So last thing on this is that being a person who's transgender is not being a fraud. It's being true to who you are.
Exactly.
It's the exact opposite. So I think he made a mistake in thinking that that'll prove his case about her being a liar. No, so that's actually the one thing she was honest about, right? To her. But overall, exposing her lies is what you should do as a journalist. So it's not a simple case. Don't make snap judgments either way on.